told your friend you're not okay? And tell me what's wrong and why you never said you felt that way. And guess you're trying to stay strong and fake a smile until I look away. But I've known you too long, it hurts to watch your blue eyes fade to gray as you fade away, as you fade away.
Yeah, I'm about to fade away, cause every time I wake up I feel like it's Monday. Something's going wrong with all the chemicals up in my brain. All of a sudden I don't look at anything the same way. Got a buildup of my thoughts sitting in an ashtray. I'm sorry that I'm so inconvenient, okay? Just let me be me and I'll stay out of your way. I can see the way you look at me, I'm such a disgrace. I never really asked to be brought into this place. You wanna love me? Well then baby have a taste. All the highs and the lows, no you'll never be the same. I don't really wanna hurt you but I can't control the pain. If you're sticking by my side, maybe we could be okay. Okay, maybe you could be the change I need today. I promise that I've never felt this way. I really hope that you will choose to stay through all the pain.
I know you told your friend you're not okay. And tell me what.
Okay, sorry about that. Hey everyone, how's it going today? Y'all ready for Christmas yet? I think I'm like there, almost there maybe, but not there there. If that makes sense. And I'm talking to myself. Hold on. All right, I'm just gonna read until people come in, or if they come in. If not, that's fine. I want to read the book anyways. Tesco goes down. If the shaver incident was the most harrowing chapter of Dr. West's career, the most thrill belonged to Tesco. Oh no, an elephant. About Dr. West's experiments, this one netted the most press, much of it scathing, but the public didn't know that the CIA's Sidney Gottlieb had funded it. On August 2nd, 1962, Dr. West headed to Oklahoma City Lincoln Park Zoo, where he invited a crowd of eager onlookers to watch his latest test. Hey, SD. To their delight, he'd secured an Asian elephant named Tesco, an exotic specimen in Oklahoma. Dr. West would attempt, he explained, to induce musth, a form of madness that occurred in male elephants during the rutting season. Are you kidding me? Oh, you know about the elephant? Ugh, it's gonna piss me off, isn't it? Musth caused violent behavioral changes. Normally cooperative and tameable, the elephant now runs berserk for a period of about 2 weeks, during which time he may attack or destroy anything in its path, Dr. West explained, claiming that whole villages had been wiped out by a single must-thing animal. In his rage, the elephant secreted a mysterious fluid, brown and sticky, from his temporal gland. Could it prove medically useful? In front of children. Holy shit. That was a screenshot? He intended to find out. His method was simple. He would simulate musts by injecting the elephant with a lot of LSD. Oh my god, I don't know if I can read this. Hey, Brenda. Oh, I looked up that book, SD, Trance. It looks very interesting. It's just so expensive. It was like $70, I believe, 60 or $70. I might have to get it on Kindle. But Dr. West had miscalculated the dosage. Of course he did. The elephant weighed a whopping 7,000 pounds. Dr. West shot him with 2,800 milligrams of acid, about 1,400 times the quantity given to a human to produce a marked mental disturbance by Dr. West's measurement. 5 minutes after the injection, holy shit, Dr. West later wrote that the elephant trumpeted, collapsed, and fell heavily onto his right side, defecated, and went into holy fuck, he had a respiratory seizure resulting in death. I want to kill this guy. Is it free on okay. Hey, T King. What a son of a bitch. Like, really? The next morning's paper featured a front page photo of the portly psychiatrist bent over the deceased elephant. Oh my God, this guy. There were no animal right groups then. Really. The elephant's death was received more as a comedy than a tragedy. Holy hell. For a time, Dr. West became the laughing stock of the scientific community, and he was soon making fun of the mishap himself. He liked to inform his lecture audience that he was the doctor famous for killing an elephant with LSD. Yeah, you're real funny. You're a fucking clown, if you ask me. Sorry, now I'm mad. Really mad. When I asked Roger Smith about Dr. West, he explained, he's the guy that killed the elephant. Great story. Wonderful story. He's always told it. I would have hit him. More than hit him, I would have been in prison. I just would have kicked his ass. The mystery behind the joke was why LSD had been used on an elephant in the first place. What good did it do to simulate muscle? Dr. West, true to form, never gave the same explanation twice. Speaking to an interview from the Medical Tribune and to another from the Daily Oklahoman, Dr. West said his objective was to find an animal model for reoccurring psychosis in humans. Elephant brains were useful analogs for the human mind. They had excellent memories, creative judgment, sophisticated problem solving abilities, and even an individual personality. Looking at elephant violence offered an opportunity to learn what changes are correlated with this gross behavior and to see if those changes happen in people too. And yet, in December 1962, article for the journal Science, West and his co-researcher acted as if their ambitions were purely zoological. Bullshit. He wanted to hurt that elephant no matter what. If they surgically removed an elephant's glands before puberty, he might grow to be a sexually capable but behaviorally tractable animal. I remember the first time I ever seen, I don't know where it was. It must have been online. Had to have been online, but the first time I ever seen a hound dog with a mask on his face and smoke. I remember how it made me feel. I wanted to hurt somebody. I already tried that one. I don't want it. No, I'm gonna take him. No, take him. Leave him. I'm eating too much. I'm gonna get fat. Take him. I'm already starting to gain weight in my gut. Look at this. Their recommendations was too preposterous that they occasioned an avalanche of letters to science. Outraged scientists questions West's true objectives, labeling him capricious and irresponsible. I fail to see any scientific merit, one wrote, or purpose. Yeah, I agree with these scientists. He should have never been allowed to be a doctor or a scientist. Nothing, anything. Dr. West left his position at the University of Oklahoma in January 1969. His successor, Dr. Gordon Deckard, found records in the department's files about the Tusco debacle, which was the elephant. When the elephant died, the department was worried. How in the world are we going to pay for that? Wow, Deckard recalled. All Dr. Jolly West would say to anybody was that he would find a way to pay for it. I learned then, when I became chair, that the source was payment from the CIA. Of course it fucking was. Having known about West's involvement in the so-called brainwashing issue in the Korean War, Deckard conceded that he wasn't terribly surprised. The financial cover was the Foundation's Fund for Research in Psychiatry, Inc., the same group that paid for West's Haight-Ashbury project. Jack Ruby's psychotic break. At UCLA, I kept requesting boxes of West's papers, and they kept leading me over trapdoors. Next, they dropped me into a quagmire I wanted no part of, the assassination of John F. Kennedy, an event that plausibly qualified as the most discussed crime of all time. Certainly, it had bred more conspiracy theories, skepticism, and amenity than any other incident in US history, altering the way Americans digested their news and breaking the nation's belief in its institutions. I flipped through West's pages cautiously, hoping that his involvement was peripheral. It wasn't. Down through the trapdoor I went. Like, this guy really did his research. He really did. Like, this is very impressive. Very impressive. The stuff that I've read in this book, I had no idea about because Bugliosi didn't put it in his book, Helter Skelter. He hid a lot of things, and a lot of the things is really fucked up and leans more towards, yeah, if anything, Charles Manson, yeah, was a cult leader, but he was helped by the CIA to do so. He was brainwashed. MK Ultra, like, this is crazy. So Kennedy was shot at his motorcycle pass through Dallas's Dealey Plaza on November 22nd, 1963. 2 days later, at the Dallas Police Headquarters, officers escorted Kennedy's assassin, Lee Harvey Oswald. I was amazed that some of what he mentioned was in Kathy's book too. Yeah, I love to have like I want the books in my hand because I always, like I dog ear it, I put post-its in it and stuff that I need to look at again or whatever. Like I want the book. It ends up becoming a book that has all these things stuck in it because of me. I investigate and I want to learn more and then I don't know, that's just how I am. But I might have to switch to Kindle because things are too expensive. So his assassin was Lee Harvey Oswald to an armored car that would drive him to the country jail, the county jail. Man stepped out from the crowd and aimed a revolver at Oswald's chest. It was Jack Ruby, a nightclub profiteer with connections to Cuban political groups and organized crime. He fired once at point blank range, sending a fatal bullet into Oswald's stomach. That's weird. So the assassinator was Oswald, and then this Cuban guy killed him. It is cheaper, yeah, I know. Just sucks. I don't know. Maybe I'll just save for it. I really want that book. He fired once at point blank range, sending a fatal bullet into Oswald's stomach. According to a first person account that Ruby produced with a ghostwriter, published in newspapers in scenario close to Susan Atkins, and again involving Lawrence Schiller, Ruby lost his senses. When he pulled out the gun, next thing he knew, the cops had him pinned to the floor, and he had no memory of what he'd just done. Wow. I can read as many books as my heart desires as long as they're on unlimited for $11 a month. That's pretty friggin' cheap. And I read a lot. Like I read for you guys. Like not to be ruining, but I mainly read for myself. It's stuff that I want to read and stuff that I believe you guys will be interested in because that's what my channel is supposed to be about. What I want it to be about was paranormal and true crime. You still have the paper books too? Yeah, so do I. I've got quite the collection of true crime. My favorite author is Anne Rule. So I've got every single one of her books except for I think two that I'm missing. Plus I've been looking. I want to get my hands on the articles that she used to write in the magazine, and she was under a pseudonym, which was Andy Stack, because back then women weren't supposed to be writing articles, right? So I want to I want to get my hands on those articles because she was writing true crime sections in this magazine. I can't remember them. Plus, she was a cop, and then she worked with Ted Bundy at the distress center. You're on your 10th book this month? No, that's amazing. And just think all the stuff that you learn, even that's how I learned big words and because some of the things, I mean, I know I wouldn't know them unless I've either heard them or I've had to look them up, and then now they just come like this. And usually I can spell them out, but there's some words that are just like, huh? You know? So, according to a first person account that Ruby produced with a ghostwriter, published in newspapers in a scenario close to Susan Atkins, and again involving Lawrence Schiller, Ruby lost his senses when he pulled out his gun. Next thing he knew, the cops had him pinned to the floor and he had no memory of what he'd done. What am I doing here? He asked. What are you guys jumping on me for? A psychiatrist analyst solicited by Ruby's defense attorney said he'd suffered a fugue state with subsequent amnesia. Oh my gosh. So, like, this begs the question now that I've read this far, is it possible, which I think it is, that he was brainwashed by MK Ultra to kill Oswald? On the advice of his attorney at the time, Ruby said he'd murdered Oswald to spare the widowed First Lady Jackie Kennedy the ordeal of testifying against Oswald at trial. Read books from different places and times, and you can learn a lot about different cultures. Yeah, exactly. Like, when I was reading Jack the Ripper, which I do, I'm gonna start doing that. I'm gonna just start, I don't know, just because I know you want me to read that. So do I. I think I'm just gonna read for like even just half an hour and just keep posting the videos and put them in the playlist. That the way you can listen to it. I think that's what I'm gonna do. That way I can get that book done, and then I'll finish the one with Autistic Show, the one with the alien encounter or the UFO encounter, I should say. Because the Jack the Ripper, like, there's so many words in there. I'm just like, what is that? Like, what does that mean? And then it come out like this one strange word, which I thought maybe was a button or something, turned out to be an actual candy. And I don't know. It's just cool. I like reading that stuff. Plus, it's got all the documents in it. Like, it's great. Hey, girl. I didn't realize that you went live early than scheduled. And no, don't be. You do you. Don't ever apologize. You come here when you can. And if you can't, you can't. There's always the replay if you want to listen to my big mouth. And if not, that's fine too. It's not like I ever need you mods, right? My channel's pretty easy, pretty laid back. Knock on wood, because I want to keep it that way. So, on the advice of his attorney at the time, Ruby said he'd murdered Oswald to spare the widowed First Lady Jackie Kennedy the ordeal of testifying against him. Another of Ruby's attorneys, Melvin Belly, later wrote that Ruby had a blank spot in his memory and that any explanation he provided was simply confabulating. Potential justifications have been poured like water into the vacuum in his pathologically receptive memory, and once there, had solidified the cement. Yay! Seemingly as soon as the story of Oswald's murder hit the press, Dr. Jolly West tried to insinuate himself onto the case. Wow, imagine that. The one who's conducting with this fucking MK Ultra. He hoped to assemble a panel of experts in behavioral problems to weigh in on Ruby's mental state. He took the extraordinary measure of approaching Judge B. Brown, who'd impaneled the grand jury that indicted Ruby. Dr. West wanted the judge to appoint him to the case. My God. Why? So we can cover it up? Like, that's the only thing I can think of. At that time, police hadn't revealed any substantial information about Ruby, his psychological condition, or his possible motive. And West was vague about his motive too. 3 documents among his papers said he'd been asked by someone, though he never said who, to seek the appointment from Brown a few days after the assassination. A fact never made public. Wow. The CIA? The judge turned him down. Oh, wow. Good. Good. Smart judge. For the moment, it seemed West would be getting nowhere near Ruby, who was soon convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to death. Ruby was reportedly unmoored by the news. He'd killed the president's assassin, and the citizens of Dallas had rewarded him with a trip to the gallows. He fired his attorney and hired Herbert Winston Smith, a psychiatrist with a law degree who had assisted in the trial to represent him on appeal. Meanwhile, at Langley, the CIA's Richard Helms was making the case that MK Ultra's human guinea pigs had to be entirely unaware of the experiments performed on them. This was the only realistic method, he wrote. To influence human behavior as the operational targets will certainly be unwitting. Once Dr. Smith was driving Ruby's legal team, one of his first acts was to request a new psychiatric examination of Ruby. You think he'd get a medal, almost, Like, I know right is right and wrong is wrong, but if Ruby assassinated the president's murderer, I don't, you would think they would save his life and not give him the death penalty. Hmm. He had one candidate in mind, Dr. Jolly West, whom he noted in a court brief had enjoyed acclaim for his studies of brainwashed American POWs. Perhaps, Smith wrote, West could use his highly qualified skills as a hypnotist and an administrator of the truth serum, sodium pentothal, to help Ruby regain his memory of the shooting. Dr. West may have rewarded Smith for the plum assignment, but by helping him land a teaching position at Oklahoma. And so, on April 26, 1964, Dr. West boarded a plane bound for Dallas. He was scheduled to examine Jack Ruby at the county jail that afternoon. So we got to him, regardless. I didn't think he would. The Dallas papers resorted in their final editions that evening. Dr. West emerged from Ruby's cell to announce that the previously sane inmate had undergone an acute psychotic break sometime during the proceeding of 48 hours. Like, this is crazy that they get away with this shit. And the fact that this author, Tom Riley, is actually even allowed to say this because it's so top secret. I mean, wow, the stuff that this guy does. Whatever transpired between Dr. West and Ruby in that cell, only the two of them could say. There were no witnesses. Oh my God. Dr. West asserted that Ruby was now positively insane. Yeah, because he made him that way. Like, you can't do that. This is insane. The condition appeared to be unshakable and fixed. So he went in there with a mission, and it won. In a sworn affidavit accompanying his diagnosis, Dr. West described a completely unhinged man who hallucinated, heard voices, and had suddenly acquired the unshakable belief that a new Holocaust was underway in America. What? Last night, the doctor wrote, the patient became convinced that all Jews in America had been slaughtered. This was in retaliation for him, Jack Ruby, the Jew who was responsible for all of the trouble. The delusions were so real that Ruby had crawled under the table to hide from the killers. Yeah, because Dr. West implanted this shit in his head, obviously. He said he'd seen his own brother tortured, horribly mutilated, castrated, and burned in the street outside the jail. He could still hear the screams. The orders for his terrible pogrom must have come from Washington. Dr. West said that the trouble had started sometime in the evening before the exam. Bullshit. When Ruby ran headfirst into his cell wall in an apparent suicide attempt, but Ruby's jailer, Sheriff Bill Decker, shrugged it off as a cry for attention. He rubbed his head on the wall enough that we had to put little antiseptic on it, Decker told the reporter. That's all. From that day forward, every doctor who examined Ruby made similar diagnosis. He was delusional. West, however, was hardly the first to have evaluated him. By then, nearly half a dozen psychiatrists, many equally renowned, had taken stock of Ruby's condition, finding him essentially compos mentis. Dr. West had been briefed on these opinions, but in his hubris, he wrote that he'd hardly bothered with them, having been unable to read them until earlier on the plane. Right. Tonight, my own findings make it clear that there has been an acute change in the patient's condition since these earlier studies were carried out. This change was too acute for Judge Brown's liking. In the preceding 5 months, he spent many hours in the courtroom with Ruby, and he'd never witnessed anything resembling the behavior West described. Imagine that. Presumably, it wasn't lost on him that this was the same doctor who'd clamored to see Ruby months earlier. After the judge heard West's report, he ordered a second opinion, saying, I would like some real disinterested doctors to examine Ruby for my own benefit. I want to get the truth out of it. That opinion came from Dr. William Beavers, who examined Ruby 2 days after Dr. West. Beavers' report to the judge, never before made public, confirmed Dr. West's findings. Ruby became agitated, Beavers wrote, and asked if I did not hear the sounds of torture that were going on. Like Judge Brown, he was alarmed by the abruptness of Ruby's disintegration. He considered the possibility that Ruby was malingering, but quickly ruled it out, explaining that it was highly unlikely, but this individual could have convincingly faked hallucinations. Beavers wondered if Ruby had been tampered with or drugged by an outsider. Yeah, obviously, he totally was by that other doctor. Beavers wondered if Ruby had been tampered with or drugged by an outsider. The possibility of toxic psychosis could be entertained, he wrote, but it is considered unlikely because of the protected situation. The truth, by that point, was sealed up behind West. Beavers couldn't have known that one of his fellow caregivers was capable of anything so diabolical, so as inducing mental illness in a patient. Like, as I can't believe he did that, but I can. Why? I want to know why. His report would have turned out differently, no doubt, if he'd been apprised of West's unorthodox fortes and his long relationship with the CIA. Hey, Jesse, your questions are being ignored. Ugh, I hate that feeling. That has happened to me though. I've asked questions and I literally was ignored and I could tell I wasn't wanted. I'm just like, all right, I didn't say anything, but in my mind, I'm like, all right, I'm out of here because I feel like a dick. Even though I wasn't being a dick, I was just being ignored. I don't like the feeling. Well, you're more than welcome here, of course. Dozens of West's colleagues offered me assessments of his character. There was praise, especially from those who'd worked with him at UCLA, but there was also condemnation. Most of it from his former colleagues at Oklahoma, where he'd done the bulk of his MK Ultra research. Got to go. Everyone have a good night. Day, night, love to all. You have a great night, girly. An egotistical, an invertate, narcissist, and a womanizer. The few who hadn't already suspected his involvement with the CIA accepted it readily. But the most relevant insight came from Dr. J. Shirley, his good friend of 45 years who'd worked with Dr. West at Lackland Air Force Base and the University of Oklahoma. Shirley was one of the few colleagues who admitted that West was an employee of the CIA. I asked him if he thought Dr. West would have accepted his assignment from the CIA to scramble Jack Ruby's mind. I feel sort of disloyal to West's memory, Shirley said, but I have to be honest with you. My gut feeling would be yes. Exactly how I felt. I did notice he was only answering those who remember. So, seriously? Well, that's some hogwash. I don't like that. Well, that person, whoever you watched, isn't going to get far with their channel then. You can't just answer people who are members and that makes me feel so bad for you. I feel sad for you. I wouldn't go back and subscribe, and I wouldn't even go. That's what I would do. I wouldn't even say anything. I'd just like, bye, walk out quietly and not say anything. Yeah, it's not very nice. It's not a good feeling, eh, Teresa? Not at all. Like I said, that has happened to me before. It's not very, it's like, it's almost like I shit in their pancakes or cereal or something. Like I leave a bad taste in their mouth, even though I usually am there all the time and not all the time, but I mean, I've been in certain chats before, and I like the creator and I like the content, but the people, it's just like, wow, you guys got some sticks up your ass. Yeah. It's happened to me a few times. I'm not going to mention whose channel though, just because I don't need the backlash and whatever. But whenever that happens, I encourage you to just unsub and don't go back. Dr. West would be capable of that. Calling West a very complex character, he explained he had a little problem with grandiosity. He would not be adverse at all to having influenced American history in some way. or other. Whether he got the credit for it or not, West had a real streak of, I guess you'd call it patriotism. If the president asked him to do something or somebody in higher office, he would break his back to do that without asking too many questions, even if it meant distorting American history. I suppose so, Shirley said. He was a pretty fearless kind of guy. I don't call that fearless. I call that just dumbassness and sick and diabolical. Exactly. A deliberate gangland killing. Oh boy, what's this now? Dr. West's fearless intervention set the stage for decades of confusion and conspiracy in Washington. A week after Kennedy's assassination, the newly installed president, Lyndon Johnson, hand selected a group of 13 men to investigate the crime of Kennedy. The president's commission on the assassination of President Kennedy, better known as the Warren Commission after its chairman, Chief Justice of the United States Earl Warren, had some dubious members in its ranks. One was Alan Dulles, the former CIA director. Kennedy had fired him 2 years earlier after he bungled the Bay of Pigs invasion. Another was the official CIA liaison to the group, Richard Helms, soon to become the agency's director, a protege of Dulles. Helms was the longtime secret employee of Dr. West and one of the few agency officials aware of MKUltra. But no one else on the commission, except presumably Dulles, who started the program, was aware that CIA asset trained in mind control had assumed responsibility for the psychiatric care of Jack Ruby, whom the commission regarded as their most important witness. This is insane. I know I keep saying that, but I can't help it because it's really fucking insane. I've never, ever heard anything like this. In June 1964, Earl Warren and others from the group flew to Dallas to give Ruby a hearing in the interrogation room of the county jail. The bulk of his testimony was a morass of paranoid rambling. He begged Warren to get him out of Dallas. The Jewish people are being exterminated at this moment, he warned. I know I won't live to see you another time. Do I sound sort of screwy? He demanded to speak with the Jew, whispering frantically, You have to get me to Washington. They're cutting off the arms and legs of Jewish children in Albuquerque and El Paso. Like, what the fuck did Dr. West do to him? This isn't to put that much fear in this man, to scramble his brain like that. Wow. The commission, unable to extract a cognate account from their main witness, concluded that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone in assassinating Kennedy, and that Ruby did not act in a conspiracy to silence Oswald. Wait, what? Yeah, obviously Lee Harvey Oswald did it, so he acted alone, okay. And that Ruby did not act in conspiracy to silence Oswald. Well, he killed him, so wouldn't that be silencing him? He was fine before Dr. West got to him. Although they saw no evidence of a secret plot, they couldn't definitely rule out such a thing. But their integrity was compromised the minute Dr. West set foot in Ruby's jail cell. Yeah, you think? That's what I'm screaming from the rooftop. Like, hold this man accountable. My God. The group was required to investigate the CIA as a routine suspect in the assassination of a sitting president. Neither Dulles nor Helms ever reported their knowledge of Dr. West's employment by the CIA. And soon Jack Ruby was no longer around to tell his own story. He died in 1967 of complications from lung cancer. In the 70s, when Congress looked into abuses by intelligence agencies, it found evidence that the CIA and the FBI had obstructed the Kennedy investigation. Uh-huh. Dulles and Helms had deliberately concealed failed CIA plots to assassinate Cuba's dictator, Fidel Castro. Wow. Allegedly, the CIA had aligned with organized crime figures, many sworn enemies of President Kennedy and his brother, Attorney General Robert Kennedy. They teamed up with anti Castro Cubans in Miami and New Orleans to assassinate the dictator. Helms had personally overseen those schemes. They're not too much because, like, I don't know. I think it's cute, but it is definitely overkill with pink. So the evidence, wrote House officials, impeaches the process by which the intelligence agencies arrived at their own conclusions about the assassination. Feeling it had no choice but to start over again, the House voted overwhelmingly to impanel the House Select Committee on Assassinations and reinvestigate. So the HSCA, which is the Committee of Assassinations, openly aspired to make the Warren Report persuasive. In its final 5-volume report, arriving in 1979, after 2.5 years and $5.4 million in taxpayer money, did just the opposite. Based on new ballistic evidence of second gunmen in Dallas, the HSCA rejected the Warren Commission's finding that Oswald had acted alone. There was a probable conspiracy, it announced, to assassinate the president. Wow. No, I like it. I have worn it, absolutely. My mom loves it. She stole it from me. It's still at her house. I had to go get it back. She's like, "I like this." I'm like, "Yeah, but it says Nikki." She's like, "I don't care. It's comfy." It's like, thanks. So you have to get them. The committee had to be measured. It didn't identify any potential co-conspirators in the president's murder. A few years later, freed of the congressional restraints, the committee's G. Robert Blakely and Richard Billings published The Plot to Kill the President, an unmuzzled account of the investigation. The murder of Oswald by Jack Ruby had all the earmarks of organized crime hit, an action to silence the assassin. So he could never reveal the conspiracy, they wrote. Jack Ruby, working for the mob, after stalking Oswald for 2 days, silenced him forever. This was a deliberate gangland killing. The co-authors saw no evidence implicating the CIA, but they remained suspicious. Their suspicions were borne out in the hulking 27-volume appendix at the HSCA Witnesses published testimony, which described behind-the-scenes maneuvering by Dulles and Helms to obstruct the Warren Commission. What's my mom's name? Make one for her. It's, I don't know, she'll allow me to say it on here. I don't know if it or not. Because, I'll keep getting doxxed and all this other shit. I don't want to say your name on here. I'll message you. It's all I need is for my family to be, yeah, no. So, along with FBI's J. Edgar Hoover, Dulles and Helms were determined to present Oswald as a crazy lone assassin and Ruby as a distraught citizen. Hoover released the FBI's initial findings just 2 weeks after the killing, concluding that Oswald acted alone. Hoover lied his eyes out. The Warren's Commission, Hale Boggs, later testified that in HSCA hearings on Oswald, on Ruby, on the friends, the bullets, the gun, you name it. Wow. Dulles was no less complicit. He'd urged the Warren Commission to limit itself to reviewing the FBI's investigation rather than mounting on its own. In secret, he met with Helms and other CIA officials to coach them on what questions the commission planned to ask. Sick. After this sniper wolf fiasco, I completely understand. Hence why I said to Twitter me, I want to keep you guys safe. Yeah. It's just unreal what people are doing. Faced with these revelations, the HSCA could only conclude that intelligence groups were hiding their links to Oswald and Ruby, if not a CIA effort to assassinate Castro. Some believe that the plot on Castro may have been turned on Kennedy after his Bay of Pigs invasion failed and he embraced other policy changes that curtailed the agency's influence, like reducing the U.S. presence in Vietnam, warming diplomatic relations with the Soviet Union, and decreasing military spending. Even President Johnson had his doubts. The president felt that the CIA had had something to do with the plot, said an Oval Office memo from 1967. If the CIA wanted to shut Ruby up, what was it that he had on it? Bert Griffin, an attorney for the Warren Commission, appeared before the HSCA to say that he and his partner had nearly confirmed Ruby's ties to gun running schemes by anti Castro Cubans. who were shipping arms from the United States to Cuba in hopes of deposing the dictator. At the time, Griffin had no idea that the CIA sponsored these gun running schemes. Wow, it's all connected. In March 1964, when Ruby was weeks away from his examination by Dr. West, Griffin and his partner approached Richard Helms requesting all the information the CIA had on Ruby. They believed it was possible that Ruby was involved in illegal dealings with Cuban elements who might have been in contact with Oswald. Helms offered only a curt reply. The CIA would be very limited in its possibility of assisting. Griffin was baffled. This was someone who was supposed to be helping him. He appealed again. By this time, Helms mustered a response. Months had passed, and West had long since paid his fateful visit to Ruby. An examination of agency files, Helms wrote, has produced no information on Jack Ruby or his activities. As for Dr. West, he also did his part to keep Ruby untainted from any whiff of conspiracy. As the Warren Commission tried to divine Ruby's motive, West sent a confidential letter to Earl Warren himself, a copy of which I discovered in the HSCA's files, dated June 23rd, 1964, and addressed to "My dear Mr. Chief Justice." West's note contends that his examinations of Ruby gave him unique insight into the man's motives for the murder. This, despite the fact that Dr. West has said Ruby was positively insane. He was confident that Ruby had acted in an irrational and unpremeditated manner when he shot Oswald, wanting to prove that the Jews, through himself, loved their president and were not cowards. Moreover, Dr. West asserted that Ruby had never seen Oswald in his life before his involvement in the Kennedy assassination broke. Without consent from his patient or his patient's lawyers, West was offering confidential medical assessments tailored to political ends. Please let me know if there's anything else that I can do and be of assistance, he added. Warren didn't. In an internal note, he dismissed the psychiatrist as an interloper, writing, I see no need to do anything with this material. Had he known of Dr. West's CIA connections, he may have reacted differently. Wow. If Dr. West couldn't voice his version of events into the Warren Commission, he could at least make sure that no compromising information about Ruby emerged. At his urging, a psychiatrist named Dr. Werner Tudor examined Ruby in July of 1965 to prepare for an upcoming hearing on his sanity. Tudor submitted a 12-page report to Dr. West. It was there in his files, bundled with an edited version that West had submitted to the court. Wow, imagine that. He struck just one passage, the most vital passage, of course. There's considerable guilt about the fact that he sent guns to Cuba, Tudor had written. He feels he helped the enemy and incriminated himself. They got what they wanted on me. Erasing those lines, West expunged the very evidence Griffin had been looking for. This guy should have been locked the fuck up. West kept meticulous notes on the Ruby case, all dutifully filed. As investigators, scholars, and journalists struggled to piece together the puzzle, he watched from afar, compiling records of his own book about Ruby. He never ended up writing it, but he paid close attention to an exhaustive 1965 volume, The Trial of Jack Ruby by John Kaplan and John R. Waltz. They wrote, the fact is that nobody knows why Jack Ruby shot Lee Harvey Oswald, and this includes Jack Ruby. Dr. West had jotted down that line with a note to himself. Good quote. It was, until now, the closest he ever came to receiving public credit for his work. Wow. Coda, The Data Spew. Libra Don DeLillo's 1988 novel about Lee Harvey Oswald features a character named Nicholas Branch, a retired CIA analyst tasked with internally reviewing the agency's conduct in the JFK assassination, once and for all. The assignment swallows him for 15 years. The agency pays for the construction of a lavish, fireproof home office, which becomes to Branch the book-filled room, the room of documents, the room of theories and dreams. He reposes in a glove leather armchair, surrounded by shelves and filing cabinets, bursting with folders, cassettes, legal pads, and books. Branch sits in the data spew of hundreds of lives. He comes to feel that the past is changing as he writes, and his ultimate subject, he knows, isn't crime or politics. It's men in small rooms. Although I had a sagging sofa instead of a glove leather armchair, and while nothing in my apartment was fire insured, let alone fireproof, I identified a lot with Nichols Branch. I immersed I was immersed in records, voices from the past, competing narratives, complexity that sometimes seemed to multiply for its own sake. No matter which way I moved, the story shifted beneath my feet. I was a man in a small room heading about men in small rooms. But where Nicholas Branch had full backing of the CIA, I had only myself. As I worked to fill out my book proposal and I hoped draw my reporting to a close, I had dreams of sharing my findings with the members of the Warren Commission, brandishing evidence that they'd never been able to prise out of the CIA. But most of the commission's members were long dead. Gerald Ford wasn't, but he wanted nothing, absolutely nothing to do with me. Burt Griffin, who'd been responsible for handling the Ruby aspect of the investigation, said in a phone interview that my findings were very scary stuff and that Dr. West's relationship with the CIA should be investigated. But he was long retired. If anyone was going to launch an investigation, it wouldn't be him. I had better luck with Arlen Specter than the senior senator from my home state of Pennsylvania. Late in 2002, visiting my parents in Philadelphia, I decided to see if he was interested in papers I'd uncovered. Specter had joined the Warren Commission. As a young investigative attorney, he participated in Ruby's appearance before the commission. When Ruby dilated on his anti Semitic conspiracy theories, he thought he had an ally in Specter, one of the commission's only Jewish staff members. Specter was also responsible for the Warren Commission's controversial single bullet theory, which argued that one bullet had taken a circuitous route through the bodies of John F. Kennedy and Governor John Connally, who had been sitting in front of Kennedy when he was shot. This theory ruled out the possibility of a second gunman. Inspector regarded it as gospel truth. He referred it to the single bullet conclusion. Since his role in the commission had launched his career, Specter had been unusually forthcoming about it over the years, eager to defend his position and to remind voters of his role in a seminal chapter of American history. Getting Specter's attention took months. Through his aides, I wrangled what was supposed to be a 2-minute phone interview. He called me from the Senate floor. I laid out my case as quickly as possible, with background on Dr. West, his involvement with the CIA's MKUltra experiments, and his examination of Ruby. Specter was intrigued. Our call ended up running to 20 minutes. Though he had no knowledge of an agency's mind control program or the congressional investigation into it, he seemed open to the possibility that Dr. West could have tampered with Ruby and thus with the Warren Commission's findings. Can you fax me these documents? He asked, offering to approach the CIA about them. I wanted him to see them in person. Once they were out of my hands, there was no telling where they might end up. And alerting the CIA to them right away may not be in the best interest of my reporting, Specter sighed. Knowing the congressman usually went home for weekends, I took a chance. If you're going to be in Philadelphia, he had a squash match that Saturday at the Wyndham Plaza Hotel. He suggested I meet him there. His aide called to set it up. I was thrilled. A sitting senator, a key investigator for the Warren Commission, was willing to hear me out in person. I followed up with a fact sharing some of the New York Times reporting on MK Ultra and more information on Dr. West. And then I got paranoid. I hadn't gone through every box of Dr. West files yet. What if divulging my findings to Spectre jeopardized my access to those? Someone could get there first and removed anything incriminating. But that was outlandish, I thought. I was flying back to LA at the end of the weekend. If I went to the UCLA files right away, I'd be fine. Even the CIA couldn't act so quickly. And yet, the more I thought about it, the more distrustful I got. Why was Specter so eager to see the documents? He didn't seem to care a whit about my credentials or lack thereof. And could it really be true that a longtime senator had never heard of MK Ultra? Specter was the chairman of the Senate Select Committee of Intelligence, the same group that had investigated MK Ultra back in the day. He had the power to open doors for me, but if he was bent on upholding the Warren Commission's findings, wouldn't he just as soon close those doors? Hey, Sally. You're listening in the bushes until Lego Master comes home. I just absolutely love those Lego games. I like the games. Actually, I think I'm gonna play after I'm done this. Me and my son play together. It's 2 player, so it's Lego figures and we go on all these cool little missions from the Marvel comics. So of course I always pick the girls. So I'm like always oh my God, Mystique, or oh my God, I can't even think of their names. I think there's Red Devil Girl. There's also there's a whole bunch. There's like Hulk, Spider-Man, Captain America, Thor. It's fun until my son decides he's gonna kick the crap out of me, and then I just get upset. I'm like, I'm leaving. I was overthinking everything and then overthinking my overthinking. At the end of the day, I decided to err on the side of caution and postpone our meeting. Maybe in the future I could have an attorney accompany me or some impartial observer. The next morning, I left a message at Spector's hotel and with his press office. I was profoundly sorry, but an emergency had come up and I really had to leave for LA that afternoon. I went to run a few errands, trying to convince myself I hadn't made a huge mistake. To this day, I wonder about that. While I was out, the phone rang and my mom picked up. It was Arlene Spector, sounding confused. Having been briefed on my plan, my mom told Spector I was on my way to the airport. Her feelings were mixed, she told me later. Her son was important enough to merit a call from a senator on a weekend, but her son had also made her lie to that senator. Spector was gobsmacked. So he's not going to meet with me? I'm afraid not, my mom said. I tried to reschedule our meeting for years. When I finally got him on the phone again, I was so shocked to have gotten through that I realized I'd long since stopped preparing for our talk. It had been months since I'd rehearsed the particulars of Dr. West and Ruby. I was much less convincing. He wasn't interested in seeing any of my papers. I just don't see where this all leads, Spector said. That was a phrase I've been hearing a lot in the coming years. I'll just read a little bit of this chapter and then I'm going to, there's something I wanted to show you guys. I can't remember now. Okay. Chapter 12. Where does it all go? Writing the music. Dr. West MK Ultra letters were my biggest discovery, I thought. If there were an answer to that question of questions, how Manson got his followers to kill, I felt it had to be there. I marshaled my energy in the hopes of discovering that they'd cross paths, or that Manson's enormous success in creating the family had some debt to the CIA's mind control techniques. I absolutely believe this is true. Absolutely. With what I've read in here, absolutely. Even if I turned up nothing, I thought considering Manson and Dr. West in parallel was a worthy effort. There's was one of the great non sequiturs of the 60s. Manson, the ex-con, the Hollywood striver, the oversexed, unwashed guru who'd been discarded from society, had used LSD to collect and reprogram his followers. In the summer of love, he walked the same streets and frequented the same clinic as Dr. West, upright Air Force officer, the world-renowned psychiatrist, the eloquent hypnotist, and who wrote to his CIA handler that there was no more vital undertaking conceivable than to dose unwitting research subjects with LSD and replace their memories. Both men were moralizers, hypocrites, and narcissists, and both were determined to make their presence felt in America they felt had gotten rotten. On the stand at his own trial, Manson said, "Is it a conspiracy that music is telling the youth to rise up against the establishment? It is not my conspiracy. It is not my music. I hear what it relates. It says rise. It says kill. Why blame it on me? I didn't write the music. On some level, he was right." I mean, yeah. I resumed work on my proposal, feeling that I had enough to make even hardened skeptics doubt themselves a little bit. Though it took me years to get all my words in fighting condition, I finally finished in 2005. It came in at a whopping 80,000 words, as long as many actual books. On the merits of the proposal, Penguin Press agreed to publish the book. I was elated and more than a little relieved. I hadn't known whether my respectable publisher would vouch for a project that mentioned Manson, Jack Ruby, and CIA mind control in the same breath. Penguin's support was vindicating, and the advance payment it offered was more than enough to let me tie up my reporting. The complete manuscript was due in early 2008, a little less than 3 years away. Now, all I had to do was finish my reporting and write the damn thing. The following year would be the 40th anniversary of the murders. I'd only missed my premiere deadline by a decade, but that had been a magazine story. This would be a book. I had big plans for the money from my advance, which was more lucrative than I allowed myself to imagine it could be. I upgraded my computer, junked my old Acura, and bought a used '85 Volvo. $400. Everything else would go back into the book. Although my friends advised me to buy property and take an exotic vacation, I didn't even consider it. I had at least 3 years of rigorous reporting and writing ahead of me. The money could help me accomplish what had been too costly or labor intensive before. I hired 2 research assistants to help me get organized. They transcribed the endless hours of taped interviews I'd amassed, more than 200 cassettes by then, most of their 90 minutes completely filled. They helped me type out the handwritten notes on my 60 legal pads and 30 notebooks, and some of the passages I'd highlighted in some 300 books. Most of my papers were in one of the 190 binders I had, and yet it allowed a half a dozen stacks of unfiled documents to grow to about 4 feet high apiece. At least they were separated by a subject. Reviewing the massive material record of my work was unsettling. I was rediscovering the fragments, micro obsessions, and niggling questions that had tugged me onward when I began my reporting. Many I'd simply forgotten about, others were unresolved and probably always will be. But a few started to tempt me again. Now that I was finalizing everything, I had to be sure I hadn't missed a lead. If a doubt sat in the back of my mind long enough, I added to it to my to-do list. Soon it was dangerously long for someone with a book to write. One of the most basic problems I had over the years was tracking people down. Many former members of the family had gone to great lengths to make themselves unreachable. They changed their names, severed ties with anyone who might have known about their pasts. At least the celebrities who said no to me once upon a time could be reached through publicists. Now I was looking for people who'd gone off the grid. I didn't necessarily want to force anyone to speak to me. But what if someone in the family remembered Dr. West or Reed Whitson, or any of the shadowy figures I'd investigated? What if, like the detective, Charlie Gunther, they had something they wanted to get off their chest for 30 years? Some of my hostile interviewees had thawed when they saw that I didn't have the sensational tabloid style agenda fueled most reporting on Manson. So I also hired a private detective, a retired LASO deputy, nicknamed Moon, who worked out of an office in Arizona. To this day, I've never met him. Though we've shared thousands of emails and calls, Moon found people and police records I never could have turned up on my own. He participated in the LASO raid of the Spahn Ranch, and he reached out to the other retired cops, urging them to speak to me. He also schooled me in skip tracing, the art of finding people who don't want to be found. Before long, I was paying to access digitized cross directories and databases, including one called Merlin that required a PI license to use. Moon took care of that for me. Between the two of us, Moon and I located just about everyone who'd hung around with Manson, most of them scattered up and down West Coast. I added them to my interview list, along with the usual mix of cops, lawyers, drug dealers, researchers, Hollywood has-beens, and congressmen. The extra help freed me up to do what I did best, dive into the archives. I had about a dozen places I needed to visit to fill in the holes in my paper trail. They were old LAPD and LASO homicide detectives, district attorneys who'd offered to show me their stuff, files on the family from courts, police departments, parks departments, and highway patrols that had persuaded the state of California to let me see for the first time, and personal files from reporters who'd long ago tried to investigate the same stuff I was after, most of them hitting the same dead ends. My to-do list was now as long as it had been in the heaviest days of my reporting, and sometimes, behind my excitement and anxiety, I could feel a lower, deeper dread. Even if I could strengthen the bridge between Manson and Dr. West, I didn't have a smoking gun. Some fabled needle at the Spawn Ranch with Jolly West fingerprints on it, or a classified memo from the Los Angeles DA's office to the FBI. I was worried I never would. The evidence I'd amassed against the official version of the Manson murders was so voluminous from so many angles that it was over-determined. I could poke 1,000 holes in the story, but I couldn't say what really happened. In fact, the major arms of my research were often in contradiction with one another. It couldn't be the case that the truth involved a drug burn gone wrong, orgies with Hollywood elite, a counterinsurgency, trained CIA infiltrator in the family, a series of unusually lax sheriff's deputies and district attorneys and judges and parole officers, an FBI plot to smear leftists and Black Panthers, an effort to see if research on drugged mice applied to hippies and LSD mind control experiments tested in the field. Could it? There was no way. To imagine state local, federal law enforcement cooperating in perfect harmony with the courts backing them up. It made no sense. What I'd uncovered was something close to an improvised, shambolic effort to contain the fallout from the murders. I couldn't walk myself through the sequence of events without tripping on something. I was a lousy conspiracy theorist at the end of the day because I wanted nothing left to the realm of the theoretical. I was sure that at least one person had a better idea of the truth than I did. Before I went delving into any more archives or darting up the coast to confront former family members, I had to return a phone call I've been putting off for years. I had to talk to Bully OC. Poor guy. Okay, I'm gonna send that right there. I did want to, I don't know, I can't remember. I wanted to play something and now. Damn. That's what it was. Sorry, I'm looking for something. I got an email stating that it says Manson family member Leslie Van Houten has blah blah blah. How she made her millions. I'm like, she made millions? I did not know that. Did you guys know that? Manson family member Leslie Van Houten has a surprisingly large net worth. Former Manson family member Leslie Van Houten is out on parole, leaving some online to wonder what the notorious killer's net worth is. Details ahead. So it says convicted murder and former Manson family member Van Houten was recently released from prison, according to reporting from CNN. The news of Van Houten's release comes decades after she received multiple sentences for the murders of supermarket executive Lena LaBianca and his wife, Rosemary, at their Los Angeles home. Many people want to learn more about the infamous woman. Van Houten, who is currently in her 70s, was just 19 when she first met Charles Manson and began to carry out murders on his behalf. Now, some want to better understand her surprisingly large net worth. Keep reading for all the details. What is Leslie Van Houten's net worth? She shouldn't be getting anything off these fucking murders. Like, really? Van Houten's net worth comes in large part from her notoriety and the role she played in the killings that have now become the only thing most people know about her. Estimates for her net worth range from 1 to 15 million. Wow. But it's unclear whether the net worth is based on how much money she actually has or how much her earnings could be if she signs a book deal or does other work to reclaim her notoriety. Any money that Van Houten has likely come from her minority and her book deals and other opportunities over the years. The money is a direct result of who she is and has little to do with any money that she or her parents had prior to the murders. Why was she released? A state appellate court ruled in May 2023 that Van Houten could be made eligible for parole, which ultimately opened up the possibility of her being paroled. California Governor Gavin Newsom announced that he wouldn't challenge the court's decision, which sparked outrage among those who are still angry with the murders Van Houten committed decades ago. I was too, and it has nothing to do with me. Like, she should have never been allowed out. More than 50 years after the Manson cult committed these brutal offenses, the victims' families still feel the impact, as do all Californians. Governor Newsom reversed Miss Van Houten's parole grant 3 times since taking office and defended against her challenges of those decisions in courts. A spokesperson for the governor said following the news.
Of the day, and this is a big story breaking this afternoon. Charles Manson follower Leslie Van Houten walked out of prison today after serving 53 years of a life sentence for her part in 2 murders. Her release coming just days after California Governor Gavin Newsom announced that he would not fight a state appeals court ruling and Van Houten should be granted parole. Van Houten's attorney says she was released from prison early today and was taken to transitional housing.
The governor is disappointed by the court's appeals decision to release Ms. Van Houten, but will not pursue further actions as efforts to further appeal are unlikely to succeed. The California Supreme Court accepts appeals in very few cases and generally does not select cases based on the type of fact-specific determination, the statement continued. Van Houten has been in custody for 53 years and will reportedly participate in a transitionary housing program that will help her learn how to support herself and live a productive life. Yeah, okay. She was initially sentenced to death following her trial, which she should have got, so she shouldn't even friggin' be out. But California abolished the death penalty in the 1970s, and her sentence was commuted to life in prison. Yeah, life in prison. It should be her life in prison, not getting out. Oh, these people. You're gonna be 50 in 14 days? Poor girl. I'm just kidding. You look amazing. I'll be 40 March 1st. So I'm 10 years behind you. Leslie Van Houten and John Waters' friendship. Oh my God. Do you remember? You guys know that guy, right? I always hated his mustache. Ugh. So creepy. But I thought they stopped being friends. I mean, I assumed they would after she murdered them, right? So what is family? The meaning of that word, blah, 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 blah. Okay, we already know this drug-fueled haze. She did the blah, blah, blah. She would eventually be convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison, possibility of parole. July 2023, she was finally released. During her time in prison, filmmaker John Waters became her friend while she was in prison. What the cuss? Here's what we know about the friendship between Leslie and John Waters. I didn't know that. What did Leslie Van Houten do? John Waters was obsessed with her story. Like most people alive in the 1960s, Waters became obsessed with the Manson trial and the Manson girls in particular. In his book, Role Models, the fifth director spoke of how much of his work was inspired by this time. Highly influenced and actually jealous of their notoriety, I went back to Baltimore and made Pink Flamingos, which I wrote, directed, and dedicated to the Manson girls, Sadie, Katie, and Les, he said. Wow. Sounds obsessed. Later, Waters would befriend Charles Tex Watson, whose drug-addled mind never fully recovered. Watson was present and responsible for both the Tate and LaBianca murders. I would hitchhike to the California men's colony in San Luis Obispo from either Los Angeles or San Francisco to visit him, and I wrote about our times rather inappropriately and with little insight in my book, Shock Value, Waters admitted. This guy's like a sick fuck. Why? Because I'm immature? It's okay, you can say it. My kid told me that earlier anyways. This is, yeah, this guy. That's him. I remember, like, that mustache always bothered me. Creepy. 1985, a decade after Waters saw Watson for the first time, Rolling Stone asked him if he would interview Manson instead. Sorry, if he would interview Manson. Instead, Waters begged the outlet to let him speak with Van Houten. To him, she's always seen the one that could have somehow ended up making movies with us instead of running with the killer dune buggy crowd. When approval was given, Waters wrote a letter to the former Manson girl who had at the point been in prison for nearly 15 years. A slow but steady friendship began between Van Houten and Waters. When Leslie responded to Waters, she told him that he would have to be patient. She was in no hurry to make new friends. He began writing about his films and his frustration in trying to get the sequel to Pink Flamingos made. He said, "She wrote me back about what else? Prison. Living in a cell the size of an average bathroom with another person." Soon, Leslie said she would enjoy meeting Waters, who immediately got on a plane to California. This is sick. On our first visit, Leslie, who looked then and still does very much like actress Hilary Swank, though she doesn't, explained that she had no interest in being in Rolling Stone because of what she had done, wrote Waters in Role Models. She was ashamed of it, not proud, and hoped that one day the terrible notoriety would fade. That, of course, never happened. It only grew as new generations discovered the Manson crimes, and the genre of true crime took on new life in the form of documentaries and podcasts. She does not look like Hilary Swank whatsoever. Van Houten and Waters both equally inspired by one another? What the shit? As Waters continued to visit her, their friendship deepened, which allowed him to witness her recovery. "I feel good about you because I did not believe you would harm me," she wrote in a letter 2 years after they met. "You make me feel good about myself. I need that, not to feel like a freak. You are a freak for what you did, freak. I'd like to propose that this year we become closer friends. You inspire me to do something with myself." In turn, Van Houten's influence on Waters was equally as galvanizing. She inspired him to believe that if you wait long enough and work hard enough on your damaged psyche, you can eventually come out of it with some kind of self-respect and mental health. Right. Prison isn't designed to help people. Inmates better themselves despite being there, not because of it. Van Houten is one of those individuals, and Waters was part of his journey. The wow. 7 easy and delicious friends giving recipes courtesy of TikTok. Oh, looks so good. That's why I was seeing it, because I need to catch on. It's her picture. Oh, that's too funny. I'm gonna go. I'm a little tired. Ooh, I still gotta have a shower. I didn't have one yet today. So it's cleaning. That's why I'm still in my shirt from yesterday. Whatever. I knew I had to do this live, so I was like, fuck it, I'll have one after when I cool down because I was still sweaty. It's gross. All right, you guys have a great night. Thank you for joining me. I'll be back tomorrow at 7. Bye.
I know you told your friend you're not okay, and tell me what's wrong and why you never said you felt that way. And guess you're trying to stay strong and fake a smile until I look away. But I've known you too long, it hurts